Well, good morning. Good morning, councillors, staff, and if we've got members of the press, good morning. And of course, to those who are watching from afar, no mai haramai, welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today, the 16th of March, 2017. Apologies. We do have two apologies this morning. Well, actually, we might have some more by the look of one side of the room. We have apologies from Mayor Chadwick and from Councillor Kumar. Are there any further apologies, please? No, thank you. I'd like a mover and a seconder, please, that our apologies be accepted. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, and thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, thank you. Are there any urgent matters that are not yet on the... Yes, thank you, Councillor Gould.
As an urgent matter, Madam Chair, Paradise Valley Road.
Thank you. Paradise Valley, perhaps we could get an update from you around that at some stage. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Confirmation of our minutes. The minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 9th of February 2017. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please, for those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you, Mr. Berryman-Kemp. Oh, thank you. So, thank you. Are there any changes, amendments to our minutes? No, thank you. Well, I'll just put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. We do have, sorry, was it Councillor Stewart for lateness? Is that right? Thank you very much. Our staff reports, that's page 14 on our... 16, sorry. Sorry, 16, thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the report, proposed draft local approved products policy 2014, harmful psychoactive substances deliberations be received. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you. Moved and seconded. I'll put that to the vote. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Good morning, Nevin. Thank you. I know you're going to give us an overview of the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is a long process that we have been going on. So,
It has been a long process, hasn't it? I think the submissions were heard about 18 months ago. So, thank you. You will have to, I think, refresh us a bit on this one.
Right, so going back to December 2013 with the previous council, the council approved the development of a policy. So the Act didn't require councils to have a policy in this space, but if you didn't have a policy, then you couldn't control where the substances were sold from. Council went out for consultation with the community and submissions closed in April 2014, and you may recall, for those councillors that are sitting around the table now, that there were many heartfelt submissions that were heard from the community and the effects and harms caused to their families around what these products had done to the people in their families directly, and what the wider implications were for the community. After that, the government removed all products from New Zealand. The core data that they had used to see whether they were harmful was found to be faulty, and therefore they were removed legally from the community. There are obviously, like many products that are out there in drugs, there are those that do them illegally and sell them still, but that's a police matter, and the police have dealt with several within our community from that time. In August 2016, we got notification from the Ministry of Health that it is likely that it will be 3 years before any products may be approved for sale within New Zealand to meet the new standards. And so that's why it's taken a longer time to get to where we are, but we believe that from the information we're seeing out there that may be quicker than anticipated. So it's appropriate to come back to the council and say we need to put the policy in place so that we can control where these products may be sold from within our community. The council's view obviously was that they would prefer none at all, but the legislation didn't allow council that option. And I know that the previous council did write to the government and say that the council's view was we didn't want any products within our community, like many other councils across New Zealand did, but the legislation wasn't changed. We did, from the submissions, the council gave us instruction as officers to go out and have a look at some options. So option one was the status quo that we went out for consultation on, which was the map that's in your report with you, which is map 1, and that was the identified sites where they were, and basically leaving the fringe of the inner city where products could be sold from. Our police colleagues, in our consultation with them, they didn't really support this because, again, it was on the fringe of the inner city and they were in areas where there wasn't high foot traffic, and the effects of the issues that we saw that some of the shops created from the people that were wanting to purchase the products were issues that we didn't want on the fringe of the inner city. Option 2 was the original maps, which was on the fringe, but with all the identified additional sites that were made during the submissions process. And for those councillors that listened to those submissions, you may recall that it was a bit like a jigsaw puzzle that was going on. The submitters were going, there seems to be a gap here, can we identify a site that would close that gap off? So what they were looking to do was get a total ban on the inner city, which again, it left a few fringe areas on the outskirts of the inner city where the lower foot traffic, and again the police, for the same as option 1, didn't support that stand. Option 3 was an option that the committee itself brought forward and stated, you know, what if they were within a certain distance from the police station, including the distances away from the sensitive sites, being, you know, the community facilities, education facilities, etc. within the inner city. That had a very high level of resonance with the police because, one, it had very high CCTV coverage in those areas. 2, any officers from the police on foot patrol would go past them, and our own city guardians, etc., and staff leaving the building would be in those areas, and if there were issues that were raised by the behaviours, they could quickly be dealt with. And so that's the preferred option, and this is where that map stands. So if you have a look at the map there, this is the small part of that 200 metres. So this is the police station, the L shape there with the black line around it. And this circle that goes around there is the 200 metres around away from the police station. But the intersecting blue segments were the distances away from sensitive sites. So all it left was basically this small portion, which is the Fenton-Hinamaya Street intersection there. And so we've got the ANZ Bank on this corner there, and then there's a whole lot of tourist shops within that area. So at the moment, those areas are quite well stocked with current tenants, but it meant that if there was a landlord-tenant relationship, they could still set up a shop within that area, but it would be in a high traffic area, high volume area of police leaving the station, etc. And then the final one was option 4, which was another one that came out of the committee hearing, which was to move it out of the inner city to an industrial site. And this, in my opinion, would fail on several levels. One, there's no CCTV network out in the industrial sites at the moment, so the monitoring of the behaviours and issues that could come from the people buying these products wouldn't be easily seen. The district plan, as it's currently written in the zones for the industrial site, wouldn't allow it, so it'd need to have a resource consent process, which is not insurmountable, but it would cause another layer. Plus the police had concerns about it being well removed from the inner city, where again they have a quick ability to respond to issues that were coming on from anybody that was causing problems in that area. And so that's where we've landed with the report for you today to approve to go to council if you so desire, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Nevin. Yes, so I'll open it up for discussion, please. I'm sure there'll be some questions, and it really does seem that this has been around for some time, well, some time in the making anyway. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Nevin, for your report this morning. On option number 3, you've got the opening hours being changed from 9 a.m. in the morning to 9:30 a.m, but you've got no closing time. So are you expecting shops to stay open until midnight, or are we suggesting that the council look at, say, 6 o'clock or 9 o'clock, or...
I think it's in the report,
If
isn't
you
it?
have a look at the, it is covered in the hours of operation under clause 6 of the policy. So it's Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So they can't operate outside that hours, and no sales on public or school holidays. So it is in your policy there.
on the report?
Yes, I think we did remember in our discussions we were aware of the school hours, and we didn't want children to be passing and seeing something like that operating. Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question before we go into discussion. This may address the issue in the city centre, but it doesn't address the issue in people's homes, in our families' homes. Was this a discussion that got brought up while talking with the police? Are we confident that, although we're addressing it in the city centre, that the police will be able to deal with the issue in our families' homes?
Yes, like current, there is no sales allowed to be from people's homes, and the police have dealt with that previously. It's a bit like a moving target, and like other drug sales, when an issue arises, the police deal with that issue, and that tends to close one down and another one pops up. It was public knowledge, and it was in the Daily Post, of the illegal sales that were going on in the community, and the perpetrator of that is currently serving time in prison for that activity. So the police do act on those issues, and yeah, once it's up, it is dealt with.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Tapsell? Is that what you were actually referring to? I wasn't quite sure.
It answers part of it, but I was also referring to the health and the safety of our families in the homes, because people can still, with this proposal, purchase it within the 30 minutes, but that doesn't actually address the issue. I mean, we've addressed it, it will be close to the police centre where they are, but it doesn't address the impacts and the damages that it does once that drug returns to a home?
I suppose the problem, like many drug issues, is that with this, the government has said is if the data shows that the use of these approved substances is acceptable, then it wasn't open to council to say that they couldn't take it home and consume it in their home. And I suppose if you look in the wider context of drugs, and I know we've had this debate many times over alcohol from the proponents that say alcohol's just another drug within our community, the harms that we can control as far as we have the legislation to do is the issue for that. So compared to, say, meth use, which there are some strict rules around, these psychoactive substances are approved by the government when they go through the data testing, and they are legally allowed to be consumed in people's homes.
Yes. Can I just ask, have all substances been withdrawn and are they all under testing at present, or are there some that are available for sale? Because I'm a bit out of the loop, I think.
There's currently no legal substances in the market that have been approved by the government. There are some substances in the community that are illegal, but the police deal with that when they have that issue brought to their attention.
Thank you. Ms Morrison?
Thank you, Councillor Kawate. Kia ora, Nevin. I just had a question of clarification, really, or feedback. And I'm looking at this map, and it's in attachment 6 of the actual policy, but in the appendix just prior to it, it talks about, there's a list of all the sensitive sites, and it appears to me, although we're going with option, recommended as option 3, there appears to be a link between sort of an overlay, and it says here's the option 3, but it also lists the sites, and I was just wondering, as and when the policy comes into place, what processes are there to ensure that that list of sensitive sites is like a live document, because tenancies change within the CBD quite often, and how are we kind of going to ensure that at any point in time we're abreast of all the various sort of changing services or other sensitive areas in the CBD?
Morena, yes, it's always an issue when you have a schedule like this within a policy that comes up every 5 years to be reviewed. When we were looking at this and we're looking at the definition of community facilities, for instance, most of those are actually sites that don't change. The only ones where it sort of became fluid, if you like, are the kindergartens and early childhood centres. And when we commenced this process, the Kit McGrath Centre was in another position, and they have changed to their new position in Haupapa Street, and they could move again. And I think the issue is that while the list of sensitive sites at the time Council approved this policy, we would go back to the words of the policy and saying that if a sensitive site, which was defined by the policy, arose during that time, they would still have to meet those requirements. And it's a bit like the process we went through when we were looking at the alcohol policy, is that we had to have a stamp in time to give a certain certainty that some sites didn't move their operation to try and close down the legally approved site. So it's always an issue, and I think at any time that council desires, they can bring the policy back for review. They don't have to wait to the maximum period to address that.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple of questions. And the first one's supplementary through you, Madam Chair, to Ms Morrison's question. So it's my first question, I guess, is around you've had some sort of signal that the 3-year approval of some products may happen earlier, which is a bit concerning, because this is an episode in our history that we've been happy to put into our past. But so what is the process for council being informed that a product may be approved? And then if an operator was to establish assuming we approve option 3, in that little pink zone there, will they have, this is back to Ms Morrison's point, is there a hierarchy of existing rights? Will they have existing rights under this policy, or can we then change the policy and force them out if say, a new sensitive site set up adjacent to them?
So the first question is around approved products. The indication is from the MOH is that that they have to go through the process. So council has no input on the approved products. It's all a very technical and very specific driven piece of legislation that the wider medical fraternity has a field into. But before a site can establish to sell these, one of the changes that was put in the amendment by the government, because of the concerns expressed by councils across New Zealand, was it is mandatory that the medical officer has approval from the council for that site. So if in the interim the dynamics changed within our approval, we still have to give that approval before they would license them as a site. The second question about moving targets, I think case law would clearly show that it would be difficult to force somebody out because another business came in to operate within that area during that process. Yeah, I think we would have a very tough line on that.
Thank you. Mr Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Just two questions. I'm sure I am, but I just want to check and clarify. Am I right in assuming that if this little area in the central city, that will be the only location in Rotorua district-wide? So it's not just for Rotorua, it also covers Reparoa or the lakes or those sorts of areas as well?
Yes, this is the only area within our whole district that approved products could be sold from if they are licensed.
And just secondly, has council been approached by anyone who is actually looking to set up a site for selling these the drugs when they are legal?
No, we had the 4 interim sites that were licensed when we started this process, but when the government made the amendment and all licences were cancelled, we've not been approached by anybody since that time.
Thank you. Mr Kent? Councillor Kent, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move 2 and 3 with option 3. However, I think the wording of 2 requires some change.
And your suggestion being?
Well, presumably we have considered and determined.
Yes. The submissions.
Yeah, but the way it reads at the moment, we're going to do it in the future. But we're doing it now.
Well, I actually thought we had. Now, yes.
No, but that's not the way it reads.
That's right. So what would you like to suggest then?
And just say that the committee has considered and determined all submissions received.
Thank you. And that is correct. Thank you for that. And I do have Mr. Berryman Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The question I've got when I've gone through, and thank you for the report, what I didn't see in the report is how we're going to communicate the outcome of implementing this policy to our community. I take on board some of the points from Councillor Tapsell, actually, that my view is that whilst this is a council regulation, the intent of what the council is trying to achieve needs to be clearly articulated to our community, because some would say what you're doing is putting those sites in prime CBD land. So my question is, and I understand the rationale for that is because we can monitor the behaviour that comes out of that. But if you don't have that second point, I think our community will be a little bit confused. So the question is, has some thought been given into how this policy and the intent of the policy, and what I gather is the council stance on these substances, going to be communicated to the community?
Perhaps I could perhaps ask Una. Yes, Una. Una usually, Una, would you care to comment on that? Sorry, Una.
So just to say that upon adoption of this, we will be looking at communications out through the district, and it will look to cover off your suggestions that you've just said there.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. For me, I think we've ended up in the best possible place we could end up, considering we have to make a decision on this. We have no option. Our community would love to ban these products completely from the inner city, from the suburbs, and from our whole district. That is, central government have by their legislation made that an impossible choice for us. That is legally not possible. So from the inner city's point of view, we would rather they weren't there. But where would I put them? Well, actually, I couldn't, in all fairness, put them in anyone else's neighbourhood either. They are, I think for me, the positive in this, and it is a positive, is that the police are very supportive of this. They see this as the best option for managing the unintended consequences that we know will come from the central government legislation. And yes, our community is the one that picks up the pieces. And that is deeply unfortunate. And unless they change their mind, this is what we're left with. So this is the best of the bad options. And we as a community are going to have to live with that. It will be down the road. They will be closely monitored. And it's only if a building becomes vacant that we'll actually have to address this. Currently, many of those buildings are tenanted. So you're going to need a willing landlord to have that willing tenant. So, and until that happens, and until we have some products, then let's hope that this isn't something that actually gets activated in our community. But we do have to have the legislation in place, and we have to have considered it. And that's why we're here today. So I'm happy to second that if it hasn't been seconded already. Thank you, Madam
Thank you
Chair.
very much for seconding that. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm happy to second Councillor Kent's moving of... Oh, it's been done, sorry. Can I just ask, and it's being pedantic, but I think it's important, on page 38 in the policy 5.11, can we just specify which police station we're talking about? And can we say Rotorua Central Police Station? Because it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they pop up a kiosk at some other part of the inner city, and then we'd be facing problems. So if we could just, and it also has a Maori name which escapes me at the moment as well, it could be in there as well, but just clearly define which police station we're talking about so we've locked it down. That would be my request.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. Well, we do have a mover and a seconder, so I'm going to, with those slight changes to number 2, that the committee has considered and determined all submissions received on the draft local approved products policy 2014, harmful psychoactive substances, and 3, that the committee recommend to council that they approve the amended draft local approved products policy 2014, harmful psychoactive substances, at its meeting on the 29th of March 2017, and that then becomes the adopted policy. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Now, may I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the report, Water Services and Trade Waste Bylaw 2010. Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you, Councillor Tapsall. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Good morning, Rosemary. Good morning, Stavros.
Good morning, councillors. This paper is to introduce the beginning of the review of the Water Services and Trade Waste Bylaw. We've had a consultant working with our team in the operational field looking at the operation of that bylaw at the moment. Just as some background, the purpose of the bylaw is around protecting water quality, protecting public health and safety, protecting council's water infrastructure investments, ensuring equitable share of costs among users, defining the obligations of owners, occupiers and the public, and ensuring legislative compliance. So this bylaw is a standard bylaw that's been in place for many years. It replaced an earlier bylaw in 2004, and this review is necessary at this time because this bylaw will expire in June this year. So we're not recommending wholesale changes to this. There's no change in policy currently at the moment that would warrant a major change in this bylaw. There's one amendment which is proposed, and this is there's a rule in here which proposes that all new residential subdivisions will be metered and subject to volumetric charges for that supply. That was put into that bylaw, but it has not actually been implemented. So it's recommended that an amendment be to remove this clause so that it brings it back in line with our existing policy, which is not to meter residential water supplies at the moment. We think that it may well be in part of the consultation of the community that issue is quite likely to be raised, and that would be a good place to start that conversation and then to do considerable more investigation into that if that were the change in policy that were to take place through the next long-term plan process. The other recommendation is that there are minor reference updates throughout to update the legislation references and Local Government Act references, so those things have been noted throughout, tracked changes throughout the document supplied to you, and you're able to make that decision as council separate to the consultation, and it's recommended that that happens before the amendment goes out for public consultation. And basically just a timeline, presenting statement of proposal and so on today, would move to consultation after the council meeting, subsequently special consultative procedure lasting a minimum of a calendar month, submissions and hearings, and then a report and final changes. So this would allow us to manage this bylaw before its expiry. So happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure there will be some questions. Councillor Kent, then Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I ask, if this was a bylaw, why we haven't enforced metering of new residential subdivisions?
Yes, thank you, Rosemary. Stavros.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's my understanding is that although the bylaw allowed the water metering of new developments is being considered by the there are two things. One is that the council does not have a policy requiring metering of all residential properties, and the random metering of individual properties as they develop would be inconsistent in terms of equity with each other. So it will require at some point in time the council to consider the reasons, the merits of introducing water meters. And what's happening in subdivisions at the moment, the connections to the mains is governed by manifolds, which will allow water meters installation in the future. But this council has to consider the merits, of a policy about water metering and the general objectives of such a policy. Thank you. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question with regard to in the Glenholme area. I noticed they're renewing water supply pipes and so forth, at that time, are they also installing meters?
To the best of my knowledge, Councillor Bentley, there's no residential meters are installed. What we are doing, we're doing what we call a sectorization. In other words, we're breaking the supply areas into sectors, in catchments, in order to monitor the water consumption in that particular area, and to identify sources of water leaks. At the moment, we do have a significant, I suppose, a reasonably high, unaccounted for water, and we really need to establish some procedures to identify the sources and activate measures to manage it in the future.
Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Stavros and Rosemary. This is more a question just to clarify. So the reason why we're doing this is that because there is also a benefit to the community of not having to install products that will allow them to that have the water meters. And secondly, in regards to the water, can you answer that first? Is that the reason why we?
Water meters has got, two primary, the installation of water meters has got two primary objectives. One is to encourage conservation, because volumetric charges, according to consumption, will encourage an individual or a household to reduce their consumption. The second objective is to identify changes to the consumption of water in an area and identify the likely sources of any loss of water in the public systems. However, installation of water meters, as far as I understand, I haven't seen the final figures, but I understand will cost anything between $7 and $10 million, for the whole district. And the question, a legitimate question, is to be asked: is that what we're trying to achieve is a benefit trying to achieve commensurate with a capital expense of $7 to $10 million? To the best of my knowledge, that question has not been debated by this council, and I think from the report we propose to start a conversation around that during the LTP next year. So it's costs and benefits, and at this point in time, those considerations have not been debated and understood and clarified.
Thank you. That was what I was trying to clarify. My second question was just to make sure that, so after this goes out, then that would be the time to discuss it on whatever comes back in the submissions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berriman-Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report. My only question is regarding the tables on pages 72 to 74, which are the permitted discharge characteristics. And it's chemicals and a whole pile of things I don't understand. The maximum concentrations that are in this table, are they best practice? Are these normal standards? Are we trying to achieve a reduction in these chemicals? Can you explain a wee bit more as to where these numbers come from, please?
I will not attempt to be a biochemist here, but I think what I can give an assurance of is that those standards are applied at the national level, that are consistent with the national water standards, and especially when it comes to trade waste. And actually, it's quite interesting having this discussion today, because a couple of days ago we had a group of people, with a national table on water quality, and as we know, we have a large project with water quality. And trade waste regulations basically aim on to do two things. One is to force and encourage those people who create waste, trade waste, to take responsibility for it and manage it on their premises. And then if they have to discharge, they have to discharge in the sewage system, which has got an ability to go to a treatment plant and they be treated and extract all the harmful material out of the whole process. So this bylaw ensures that we have the parameters of measuring what can be discharged in the sewage system, and those parameters are consistent with national averages and the Ministry of the Environment guidelines and so on. So if I wanted to go on item by item at the moment, I would not be able to give you a clear answer. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just clarification, Stavros. So Nothing changes in here in terms of residential premises that are converted to business use. So if any residential premise is deemed, and if our policy in relation to what constitutes a business operation for example, a Booker Batch property changes, we can still have metering installed on that, insist on metering to be installed and charged. Is that correct?
Correct, Deputy Mayor.
Gould?
Madam Chair, thank you, Stavros, for your report. I've got a number of questions. Page 93, swimming pools. On the swimming pool bylaw, we class spa pools and swimming pools as the same, but I think you find it a little bit difficult putting in a flow limiting device to ensure the discharge does not exceed the maximum instances. Is that going to be another cost for the swimming pool people to pay for to put into their swimming pools?
Again, it would be another cost, but, I think we need to remember we're trying to balance here reliability and security of supply to all the community. And the primary purpose of potable water supply is satisfying the well-being and the health requirements of the community. Swimming pool is a recreational thing, and if we have to incur some additional cost to limit the amount of flows into the pools because of that, then that's what the regulations. Then you have to incur that cost to monitor and regulate the amount of water that extract from the main system into the pool.
All right, just
In
adding to
reply,
that.
a spa pool, you fill it up with water from the tap, and it's got a heater built in. So do you think you should put another mention of spa pools as a separate item?
Can you,
Through Madam Chair, just maybe Rosemary just can clarify this. I don't think that's changed from the previous policy. So if there's an existing swimming pool, which is the vast majority, they should have been complying with this requirement around the flow anyway. So it's not a new cost unless you're putting in a new pool. So this has been the policy for some time.
Another question is concerning page 93 again. With the geothermal fluid waste, when you've got in blue relevant regional councils, do the different regional councils, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and the Waikato Regional Council, do they have different policies on this?
could possibly.
So this correction is simply because this is a track change where it just had an abbreviation for Environment Bay of Plenty, and that's actually acknowledging that we do have two regional councils in our area, and it's not just around the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. That's all that correction is noting that we actually have two regional councils that people have to comply with their rules as well.
Because in the CBD, in the Sydney area, the regional council in the areas which are to various
Yes.
Yes.
And that makes it clear there that whichever relevant council area it's in.
That's correct.
Also on page 95, you've got a mention of green fields. I couldn't see at a quick glance about brown fields.
I know what green fields are, I'm not quite sure what ground.
So greenfields is referring to new
redevelopments
as opposed to existing developments. So that's specific to new development, that clause.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Mr Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, just a question around water metering again. And in a lot of places, water metering is used as a way to conserve water rather than to just charge for it. But it has an obvious effect on reducing people's demand. So in the long term, we've had presentations on the difficulty with the wastewater treatment plant to meet its nutrient targets in the future. Would you see water metering as being a way of encouraging the community to reduce their water usage, therefore their wastewater, and possibly use that as a means of reducing our nutrient output from the wastewater treatment plant?
I think it is a valid consideration. However, in terms of a hierarchy of priorities, I would suggest that the incurring of a $7 to $10 million community cost to install water meters, when you calibrate it against the benefit you get from that, probably, at this point in time, it's very hard to justify. If we want to achieve some tangible positive effect into the inflows to the treatment plants, it's better to concentrate limited resources into reducing inflow and infiltration, i.e. the intrusion of stormwater into the sewage system. And another consideration with regards to the water conservation and water consumption and the potable water, drinking water, I think our main focus should be more around identifying and reducing the water leaks from our public system as a first port of call, and a secondary consideration in the long term should be the security of supply. We're getting sourced water from various sources at the moment, but we do not have a network that interlinks one catchment to another catchment, so they don't have a balancing act in the whole system. So you have to, let's say if you had tomorrow $10 million to spend somewhere, I would say that $10 million is better spent in reducing inflow and infiltration, reducing leaks in the public system, balancing a water supply for future security purposes, and water meters, is fourth or fifth down the line of priorities, in my opinion. But it's for consideration by elected members in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt?
It's really a comment just to Mr. Berryman Camp that those, all the HASNO, the hazardous substances, are clearly covered in the district plan, and there are national experts in that field, and so when those places are consented, then what we're reflecting here are very standard national guidelines around the country. Everyone would like to think there weren't any hazardous substances, but there are a number of them, and they are dealt with effectively within the bylaw.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Oh, thank you. Are you moving 2, 3 and 4? Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Kent. And I'll just put those. 2, that the committee recommends to Council that the updates of references and minor corrections to the Water Services and Tradeways Bylaw 2010 as set out in this report be made. 3, that the committee recommends to Council that consideration has been given to the requirements of the Local Government Act 2002, and it is proposed that the bylaw be amended as set out in this report. And 4, that the committee recommends to Council that the statement of proposal and proposed amendment to the bylaw be approved for special consultation, and that Council hear and deliberate on any public submissions made to the proposed amendment. It has been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Now, may I have a mover and a seconder, please, to go into public excluded? Thank you. It's been moved, Councillor Donaldson, and seconded Mr. Berryman Kemp. Put that all those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Just wait for a moment while we do it. If you'd like to just take a quick, we'll have a quick break, and someone might like to get a coffee before we